Ziskind. Welcome to Nelson Today. Have you ever wondered what the garbage man actually does with the stuff he collects from behind your house? Have you ever contemplated how much it costs to bury the stuff, in both financial and environmental terms? Well, we can dig out from under this mess, and our guest tonight, Michael Jessen, Nelson's new recycling coordinator, is just the man to show us how. So good morning, Mike, and thank you for inviting us to your office and giving us this chance to find out what recycling is all about.
Pleased to have you here.
I'm curious about how you came to be involved as the recycling coordinator. What is your personal history? I heard you say that you were involved in the original efforts.
Right.
What is this has this been your regular line of work occupationally, or just an interest that's now become an occupation for you?
Well, I tell people that I'm now getting paid to do what I did for free 18 years ago. Basically, I was the coordinator of the recycling depot back in the early 70s, and ran the depot and sent away the material and got the volunteers organized. And throughout the 70s and early part of the 80s, I was also coordinator of a couple of groups, one called the Nelson Community Conservation Center, which produced a number of reports on recycling for the city and the regional district. And that carried through the Kootenai Conserver Enterprise Society, which was the nonprofit group that was going to actually operate the recycling function. And I was also associated with that. So I've got a fair amount of experience in putting together reports and actually running a depot.
All right, so you've got quite a bit of history coming into this position.
Mm-hmm.
So what exactly is your job now? What is the recycling coordinator to do? What's your mandate?
Well, my mandate is to have a recycling depot established in the portion of the regional district for which I work, which is Nelson, Salmo, and electoral areas E, F, and G. There's a bit of a shift going on in how regional districts get their power, and I would say by April of 1991, every part of the regional district of Central Kootenai will be able to allocate tax dollars for recycling purposes. And some of the areas like Castlegar and the area around Silverton, as well as the Nelson area, are establishing recycling advisory committees, and those are a group of citizens who are interested in recycling and who are planning how recycling is going to come in their part of the regional district. So through these kind of recycling advisory committees, when we are ready to provide some tax dollars for recycling, hopefully the plans will all have been worked out, and they'll have seen and benefited from our experience as well, we hope.
So I'm one of these people who was raised in a city and had no idea where vegetables came from other than the supermarket. And I'm correcting that, by the way, little by little. Have a garden now. But I also have no idea, for instance, where my trash goes once I put it out on the street and the garbage man comes and picks it up. Where does that trash go after it leaves my house?
This is a big problem to overcome with regard to waste disposal, because again, people have been so accustomed to just throwing stuff into a container, mixing it all up, putting it in a part of their yard, and magically someone comes, sometimes you don't even hear them, and they come and they take away this stuff, and the can is suddenly empty again, and where's it gone? It's vanished. It's terrific. It's great. We don't know what that's costing us, but the regional district has been responsible for disposal of garbage for the sub-region, electoral areas E, F, and G, Nelson and Salmo, for about 10 years. And we've established transfer stations, which are basically just a place where there are large metal containers that people put their waste in. Those metal containers are put on the back of a truck, and they're trucked all the way to the Canex Landfill, which is 32 miles from Nelson, 52 miles roughly from Balfour. The containers are emptied there, and the truck comes back to the various transfer stations and unloads the empty container for refilling again. Basically, one of the real wastes that goes on is the amount of yard waste that people are throwing in. I mean, if you can imagine, people rake up the leaves in their yard instead of composting them in their backyard or somewhere, they are just put in a bag and thrown into this container, and we have to truck these leaves 32 miles down to the Canex Landfill where they get buried in the ground. And because they've been put in a plastic bag, very often the bag will not break down, and those leaves are basically entombed in the ground. We're on our way to the landfill. We saw how the trucks at the Nelson transfer station pick up these large bins, and they drive this route sometimes as often as 5 times a day with those containers. And we go 32 miles from Nelson, past Salmo, to the landfill, which is known by the name of the Canex mine site.
And this is the landfill site for what area of the region?
Any person that dumps waste from Balfour, Harrop, Proctor, from Nelson along the North Shore, Blewett, Tagum, right out to Bonington, anybody that brings waste to the Nelson transfer station or the Balfour transfer station, the transfer station in Weimar, and the transfer station in Salmo, all this waste goes to this Canex landfill site. This is the Canex landfill site, and there he is taking that stuff that was just brought in, and he's going to just crush it down, move it off into a pile.
I guess I would describe the odor as odoriferous.
It's very hard to put a description on it, but it's not very pleasant. You don't want to inhale this too long.
Kind of like 1,000 skunks died all at once or something.
Something's dying here. What have we got there? Looks like some kind of diapers or something?
Could be stuff from the hospital. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows?
What's your name?
Gordon Spears.
Hi, Mr. Spears. How long have you been driving a truck for the garbage disposal?
For regional district?
Yes.
12 years.
What do you think about all these recycling possibilities here?
Well, I guess we're going to need them. It's a thing today. Got to eliminate some of this, eh?
Hopefully. What are people supposed to do, for instance, with their toxic or hazardous waste? For instance, the other day I had some old paint cans and stuff I wanted to throw out, and I didn't want to dump it into the garbage or the sewer system. What do people in our area do with those things?
They're a very large problem, and they are very dangerous. A lot of the older paints in particular contain high amounts of lead and cadmium, other heavy metals. So putting them into a landfill, there is the possibility they can endanger wildlife, they can get into the water around a landfill. We'd like people to be conscious that these are dangerous products, number one, and then we'll try to come up with some way of safely taking them from people, possibly with paints, for instance, has been done in Seattle. They've been collecting old paint and actually combining it with just all the paint they collect, and they make a new paint out of it called Seattle Beige. And they found that it's more cost effective to do that with the paint than to dispose of it as a hazardous waste, which in the United States are under very heavy regulation as to what you can do with them, and very costly to dispose of them. The provincial government in British Columbia has yet to come up with a location for a hazardous waste disposal site in British Columbia. It's possible we might be using some other provinces, and so actually for the meantime people are being asked to just store their hazardous waste in their home or garage and keep it under lock and key if possible, and at some point we hope to have a collection of the material. One of the predominant materials that we have difficulty with is plastic. Maybe at some point in time our society is going to have to decide, you know, what are a good use for plastic and what is an obvious bad use, where we can cut down, because you know, this stuff is just all over the place. It blows around. It's very difficult to bury.
I think one of the difficulties with the public has been that most people, I don't think, want to care about what happens to their waste. I mean, you look at this, it's not exactly aesthetic. It's not something that one wants to spend a whole lot of time thinking about what happens. I think most people are happy to just put it on the back doorstep and be glad that somebody else picks it up and they don't have to look at it again or deal with it. How do we turn around the public mentality and create an awareness that it's a fact of life that everyone has to become involved about now?
Well, I guess we should be, at this stage of where we're at in the 90s, we should be concerned about the environmental effects of burying this very valuable products that still could have some useful life. We should be concerned about the fact that this piece of land is going to be essentially useless for a considerable period of time. And we should be concerned that in 1989 we spent more than $400,000 trucking waste down here to be buried. It's costing the regional district slightly over $53 a ton to bury this waste. Now, some of that material, like computer paper, for instance, that's worth $250 a ton. And other fine quality papers from offices are worth between $140 and $180 a ton. So you can see that if we can take some of these materials out of the waste stream, glass, for instance, is worth about $70 a ton. So in other words, instead of paying $53 to bury it, we could make $70 a ton from selling it. So we should be concerned about the economics of what we're doing. It's a terrible waste. It's like burying money.
So, Mike, after this landfill site has been filled up totally and covered over, what happens to the land at that point?
Basically, there's not much use for the land after it has performed its landfill function. There could be methane gas given off in the decomposition process, so it's very unlikely you'd want to build a building on it because it might blow up at some day. You'd have to siphon off the methane gas for maybe as long as 15 or 20 years. It's very difficult to grow anything on it because what's underneath here is probably quite hazardous. There's all kinds of hazardous materials that are put into the landfill. Not good food supply for trees or any other kind of plant. So basically the land will sit here until probably at some point in the future we'll have reached a point where we may want to mine the landfill again and take out all of the useful materials that we've buried under here. We decided, rather than waiting and having a recycling depot that can take the whole range of materials, we're starting out with a depot that is basically just focusing on paper first. Newspaper from homes and also fine quality paper from offices and schools. We think it'll only be a couple of months before we have the equipment that allow us to take glass and tin cans and cardboard. And by then, we hope that everybody's going to be just so excited about recycling that they'll just be providing us with all of the stuff that's out there.
Well, it seems like there's certainly a lot of interest in it at this moment. So let's take it step by step. First step, we're dealing with paper. Okay, let's talk about households.
Yes.
What can people do in their households? What kind of paper? How should it be bundled, saved? Where does it get taken, etc.?
Okay. The most important thing for everyone to remember is that with recycling, there's a bit of a change. It's quite a big change, actually. Before, they were very used to taking their garbage and mixing it all together. With recycling, they have to do the opposite. They have to keep it all separate. So every kind of paper has to be kept separate from other kinds. And this means that when people are saving their newspapers for us, please keep the flyers away from the newspapers. Put them in a separate bundle. When we sell the material to a buyer, we let them do the mixing. We let them decide, oh yes, we'll add that to the mixture or whatever. It's better if we just keep everything clean and separate. There are something on the order of 50 different grades of paper, and so if we can train people right from the start to keep each grade separate, then we're more than halfway home. They can bundle them, tie them up with some string if they like, put them in a paper bag, put them in a cardboard box. It doesn't matter. The best thing to do is have them flat. Don't have them rolled up, or the thing we have to do, because we got to ship this material a great distance, is have the paper take up the least amount of space for the amount of weight that we have. And so keeping it flat is really important. Just the same as in an office or in a school, we need to train people not to crumple up their paper anymore and throw it in the recycling box, but to leave it flat and put it in the recycling box.
Okay, at home, for instance, letter writing paper. Should we be saving that at home, or at this point just the newspaper?
No, if it's the kind of paper that's blue lined, or if it's white paper out of a writing tablet, that's perfectly all right to put in your recycling box. The big thing to remember is that each grade of paper has a different value when it's sold to a buyer, and therefore in order for the regional district to get the top dollar for the paper, we need to be sure that it's all kept separately. So white paper is worth $180 a ton, so you've got to keep the white separate from the colored paper, which is only worth $140 a ton.
I see. Okay. And now at business, what are you asking people to do at businesses?
At businesses, we know that if the regional district office is any indicator, our photocopier doesn't always perform to the standards that we'd like, and we've got a lot of wastage. Save that. That's really important. Also, many times we duplicate too many copies of agendas and things like that. We've got a lot of leftover. We've got to start to save that paper and take it out of the waste stream. Again, just keep it separate by color. White in one box and colored paper that's non-white. Anything that isn't white goes in the colored box.
Okay.
And that includes, by the way, the paper that's being sold, the recycled paper, which is kind of like a buff color. That's also
considered
goes,
white?
That also goes in the colored box.
Oh, in the colored box.
Yeah.
Okay. Recycled paper is considered colored.
Yeah.
Now, for the expanded program that we're hoping is coming in a couple of months, we can start saving up our cans and bottles now for that at home. And as far as the bottles are concerned, different glass colors important here?
Again, it's very important to keep the glass separate, and I would suggest basically you don't have to keep it separate at home as long as you're not breaking it, and I would not advise anyone to break it at home because it's very dangerous. They need to wash the glass out, remove the lids. You can leave the paper labels on the glass, and then just put all the glass in a box, and when we have our glass crusher at the depot. We'll break the glass there, and we'll break it by color.
So
With the tin cans, we need the lids taken out and the bottoms taken out. We need the paper labels taken off the cans and the can flattened. And then just put them in a bag or a box. And you can start doing this at home now, and as I said, we hope within a couple of months we'll have the equipment that we need to process the material at the depot.
Okay.
Now it's important to know the distinction between an aluminum can and a tin can.
yeah, how does one tell that?
Well, you can tell basically by feeling them and pushing them. An aluminum can will press in very easily with your hands with very slight pressure, make a little popping sound. A tin can, vegetables come in them, soups, pet food, they're very hard to push and obviously heavier.
Do they need to be separated then? Keep the aluminum cans separate from the tin cans?
Yes, definitely.
But they both need to be crushed?
Aluminum should not be flattened, just give us the aluminum can as is. It makes it a lot easier to process, and we do have literature that we put out with instructions that tell people, and we hope that they'll post it up somewhere in their home, on their refrigerator door or wherever, so that they've got them handy, so that they know what to do with them. And then for the time being, until we have a collection system of recyclables, we ask that people bring them to the recycling depot, which is at 519 Front Street in Nelson.
Okay.
And it's open on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
So, Mike, would you like to introduce me to your friend here who's working at the recycling center?
Yes, this is Fred Jamin. He's the person that looks after the depot here and helps people bring the material in or shows them where to put it, that type of thing, and make sure that the depot is kept orderly.
Great. Hi, Fred. Have you started to get any people showing up with paper yet?
Yes, quite a few. Saturday there was actually about 20 different people coming in, and other kinds of materials as well came in on Saturday. Yeah.
So it's okay to start bringing paper in even though you haven't had your official opening yet?
Yes, and as you can see in the back here, we actually have almost a ton and a half of newsprint already.
That's wonderful. So is this the way that you would like your packages tied up, or
This is probably the best way to do it. We would just ask when people are sorting their newsprint if they could keep anything that's colored separate from the actual newsprint, and we can actually get a much better price for the newsprint if it's got no color in it.
so you would be essentially wanting to take this part out? The color. Well, we've got
This is what it.
even newspapers that have color pictures in them, like even sometimes the Nelson Daily News will have a color picture on its front page.
That's not a problem. There's not enough volume there to make a difference. It's when you get a colored flyer, such as a Safeway flyer, and that it's got so much color in it, we need to keep it separate.
Okay, fair enough. And how much, this is a pretty large space you've got here. How much footage do you have?
It's about 3,000 square feet.
Wow, it's a lot of paper.
Well, it's not only for paper. We're eventually going to be recycling cardboard and tin and glass.
Right.
And so we need all that space.
So we're now at the back part of the depot here.
Yes, this is our loading, unloading area. So if people are coming, say, with a pickup truck load full of recyclables, they can just swing around the Ellison's building and come down to that dead end of Josephine Street and then just back their vehicle right up to our loading dock. And then, of course, when we go to ship out the material, this is where the truck will come in to load the material going out.
Okay, so what's going to happen with the paper that you're now collecting?
With the paper that we're collecting now, we will be selling it. It's not determined the exact market. It'll either be Spokane or Vancouver, and that's dependent on who's going to give us the best freight rates to trucking to the various centers.
But you do have you do have buyers who
Oh,
are
yes.
interested in
Oh,
buying
yes.
our
Yeah.
recycled.
Yeah. We're really wishing to sell it to someone who's going to make it into a product in British Columbia. Some of the buyers in Vancouver sell the paper to the Far East market, and in our changed consciousness about waste, we're starting to realize this is a resource. It has value, and it's like trees, it's like minerals, and if we are shipping these resources, recyclables, away from our communities, we're losing a resource that we perhaps could put some kind of added value to. If we ship them out of the country, out of the province, then we're also losing jobs that would remanufacture, reprocess these recyclables into a usable product again.
So I guess the bottom line question about money here is whether recycling costs us money or whether it saves us money. What are the dollars and cents figures about whether the recycling program is at any point ever going to become profitable to us rather than... I realize that there are other costs involved that are not financial. If we don't recycle, there are a lot of costs that have nothing to do with money,
Right.
but are very expensive to us as a society.
Yeah.
But just talking about finances for a moment, is this going to be cost effective ever for us?
Well, recycling is the only method of waste disposal that does bring in some revenue from the sale of the material. What will be the determining factor as to how cost effective it is really basically comes down to people's cooperation. Last year, the regional district, from its transfer stations, trucked over 8,000 tons of waste to the landfill site at Canex. We know that of that waste, easily 50% is recyclable, maybe as high, some people think that maybe as high as 70 to 80% is recyclable. Now, if we can take that 70 to 80% out of the waste stream, and we can sell the material to reprocessors, we can reduce the amount of trips that we're making to that landfill site, and that's our basic high-cost item in our budget, is driving those trucks day after day after day.
So I have the sense that this is really an area of life in which individuals have some power. I mean, we're always complaining that we don't have any control in our lives over the things that are of importance, but it seems like what you're saying is that each individual here can really make an impact on their own life by involving themselves in this whole recycling cycle.
It's sometimes hard for an individual to think that just by their taking these little actions that they can actually make a big difference, but they can. If you just took that 8,000 tons of waste that we trucked last year, you divide it by the population that we have in the area, you work out that each person created almost 3 pounds of waste per day in 1989. That amounts to half a ton of waste over the course of a year. So each person has the ability to probably easily save 500 pounds of waste, and maybe more, just by taking these simple actions and learning a few new habits with regard to recycling. We're also encouraging people to compost. If they don't have a backyard compost, to establish one, or maybe work with some friends and neighbors to have one established on their block or in their neighborhood. Because compostable materials such as yard waste and food waste account for approximately 25 to 30% of the amount of household waste that we throw away. So we can keep that out of the waste stream. We're not only saving the recyclables, but the compostables. Then if people start to practice what we are encouraging to do, which is called pre-cycling, which is making some conscious decisions before they buy products. It's kind of like a bit of the forgotten element with regard to recycling. You aren't really recycling until you buy back the products that have been made from recyclable material. And with recycled paper, for instance, that means that it has to be post-consumer paper that is in the recycled paper. It has to have that content in it. It has to have post-consumer content. So that means that it's been used. It's not just mill ends or envelope cuttings that have been recycled in the mill. Some people sell that as recycled paper. But true recycled paper is stuff that's been out in the marketplace. It's been written on, typed on, photocopied on, been collected, shipped back, and reprocessed back into paper.
How is the consumer supposed to know the difference?
Well, the provincial government and the federal government are coming out with programs to help identify these kinds of products. They are putting environmentally friendly logos on various products that have been through a testing process to know that they are following the right process. But basically, at the moment, the consumer has to keep their eyes open and not be taken in by claims that something is environmentally friendly when it may not totally be. Again, they should buy products that are in glass containers, especially containers that are refillable and reusable. We tend to buy pop and other beverages sometimes in plastic and sometimes in aluminum. And while aluminum is a good material to recycle, glass containers can be reused 15 to 20 times before they have to be recycled. So there's a conscious decision, a pre-cycling decision, to buy your product in the glass container because it's better for the environment if you take a whole life cycle cost in terms of the material used to make the container, the amount of air, water pollution produced during manufacture, the ease of disposal, the reusability. Glass wins out all the way, so that's the container to buy in. We've got to let the manufacturers know. They produce their products, and if they disappear from the shelves, they take that as a vote of confidence. So again, if the individual decides not to buy a particular product because it's not in a reusable or recyclable container, they can have a big impact because they leave them on the shelf. The manufacturer very quickly realizes, I'm doing something wrong here and I've got to correct my action.
Well, thanks, Mike, very much for taking the time and showing me around and giving our viewers a chance to see what's in store for us in Nelson Ray Recycling. I must say it was one of our more pungent interviews.
Yes,
Pardon the pun.
Yeah. Well, we thank you very much for your interest, and don't forget, reduce, reuse, and recycle.
Reduce, reuse, and recycle. Right on.
So bundle up those papers, crush those cans, and haul them out to Nelson's new recycling center. Let's take back some power in our lives and make a difference. For Nelson Today, I'm Prashant Ziskind.